Okay, this video tutorial looks at the mathematical strand of money and financial mathematics, and more specifically, we're going to focus on our understanding of simple interest. So simple interest is basically an interest or an amount that's calculated each year as a fixed percentage of an original amount of money that's either borrowed or invested. And there's a formula that we use to calculate simple interest, and interestingly enough, it's actually quite simple. Our formula is I equals PIN, where capital I is the amount of interest earned, P is the amount of money that you've begun with, so that's you've either borrowed or you've invested. I is your interest rate, and this is per annum, so per year. And N is actually your time, and your time is also in years. That's very important to remember. So we're going to have a look and see how we can actually use that formula to calculate some unknowns. In our first example question, it says if Joe wanted to put $2,000 in a bank account for 2 years at an interest rate of 6.5% per annum, so that's per year, what would the total interest be? Now remember that our formula is I equals PIN, where I is our interest rate, our interest earned. We don't know what that is. P is our principal value, or the money we've started with, which happens to be $2,000. I is our interest rate. So this is 6.5%. 6.5%. And N happens to be the number of years. In this particular case, it's 2 years. Now there's a problem here, and the problem is our percentage, because we need to convert that to a decimal before we can do any calculations. So we're going to rewrite our formula, but with our values that we know. Now remember that 6.5% is actually 0.065 as a decimal. We're going to times this by 2. We're simply going to put that into our calculator. And that's going to give us an interest earned of $260. Now let's look at our second example question. It says after 6 months. So 6 months is actually our N value. And in this particular case, it's going to be half a year, or 0.5. Since depositing her savings into an account, Sarah has a total interest of $350. So $350 is our actual interest earned. If the account had an interest rate of 7.5% per annum, again per year, and that's our interest rate, what was Sarah's original savings amount? So we're actually looking for P. We don't know what P is. So let's fill in our formula. We've got I equals PIN. I we know was 350, and that equaled P multiplied by our percentage or interest rate, 7.5%, and we multiplied that by our number of years. In this particular case, it's half a year, 0.5. Now again, my interest rate is not in a decimal, it's a percentage. So this again becomes 350 equals P times by 0.075 times by 0.5. So we now have a formula that looks like this. 350 equals P bracket 0.075 bracket 0.5. We can actually rearrange this formula to get P by itself. And here's how you do it. We have 350 on one side. We now need to divide by these two brackets here. So we put divided by 0.075 and times by 0.5, and that's going to give us our P value. So we simply put that into our calculator. 350 divided by bracket 0.075 times 0.5, close bracket, and that's going to give us a value of $9,333.33. I'll round up to 34 cents. Have some practice questions to have a go at, and they'll come up on the next slide. Please feel free to pause the video. Once you think you've got the answers, continue the video and we'll see how you went. Okay, so as stated, here are the practice questions. Please feel free to pause the video, answer the questions when you think you've got the questions correct, continue the video and we'll see how you went. Okay, so in our first question, it says find the interest payable on an investment of $20,000 at 12% per annum over a 4-year period. So essentially we're trying to use our I equals PIN formula. We're trying to find out P is $20,000. Our interest rate is 12%, which is actually 0.12, because remember we need to put it in as a decimal, times by 4. Now our interest, we can put that straight into a calculator. 20,000 times 0.12 times 4 is going to give us $9,600. Our second question says Billy borrows $10,000 for 5 years, paying 13.5% simple interest. Calculate the total amount of Billy will need to repay. Okay, now when you are repaying from a bank, you need to repay the money that you borrow plus the interest that it earns. So essentially we need to find out our interest. In order to do that, we know our P is $10,000. We know our decimal would be 0.135, and we know that we borrowed something for 5 years. So let's work out that first. 10,000 times 0.135 times 5 years. So that gives us an interest of $6,750. Now we need to then add the original amount that we've borrowed. Alright, and that's going to give us a total interest that we need to repay of $16,750.